views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on my site, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you are encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. Thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we are syndicated into 12 million additional households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. Welcome to the show. 2 topics today. We will be talking in the second half of the show about the next big presidential campaign news may be coming tomorrow. We may be learning who Barack Obama has selected as his running mate. But for now, I want to return to Georgia. Not Georgia in the United States, but the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. The Russians have agreed to withdraw from Georgia, but instead of withdrawing, they are actually encroaching further onto Georgian land. This morning we had breaking news. That was the Russian troops had moved to a Black Sea port. They took into custody 20 Georgian troops, blindfolded them and handcuffed them, and just to up the ante, to prove that they carry a bigger stick than the rest of the world, they think, they took a couple of United States military Humvees that had been sent there to help distribute aid to the Georgian civilian population. They were now being redeployed. The vehicles were, the Humvees, and they were being ready to be loaded onto ships or onto a ship to be sent elsewhere, and the Russians took U.S. military equipment. I haven't heard the Pentagon or the White House respond to that. Thank God it was just the Humvees and not U.S. military that they absconded with. But clearly, they are not withdrawing. Now, many of you have said, you're just reporting this from the United States point of view, and the United States news media are just being reflective of what the President of the United States is saying. There are 2 sides to this story. Some of you think that Russia is the victim and Georgia the aggressor. Well, I decided to go to a site where you can not argue by any stretch of the imagination that it is reflective of the U.S. point of view. AlJazeera.net. Let me read to you what Al Jazeera has to say. Georgia has said there are still no signs of Russia withdrawing its troops from deep inside the country as NATO foreign ministers meet in Brussels to work out a response to Moscow's military action. Russian troops remain entrenched in previous positions, including in and around the flashpoint city of Gori. Jonah Hall, Al Jazeera's correspondent in Tbilisi, said one suspects that there is unfinished business here for the Russians. The Russian soldiers are bearing the insignia of peacekeepers on their uniforms. Hannah Belcher, reporting for Al Jazeera from Georgia, says that their troops, the Russian troops' only movement has been toward Tbilisi. Al Jazeera correspondents have seen with their own eyes that Russia is simply making no preparations to withdraw at all. Hey, this is coming from Al Jazeera right there in Georgia. And I find it extremely disconcerting that they decided that they could take U.S. military assets and seize them. What right have they to do that? Let's get right to your calls. Hear what you have to say about this developing story, still developing story in Georgia. Let's go to Eric in Iowa. Eric, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Hey, Gary. The I guess from hearing what you were reporting, and reading over some of the other newspapers around the world, Russia, the Russian paper, I think it's called, I can't pronounce it right, but anyway, in English it means the truth. Pravda, I think that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, they were reporting that they're staying as long as they want to. The U.S. and NATO cannot force them out of Georgia. They're in no position to. That NATO is stretched so thin that they can basically stay as long as they want to. They feel no threat by NATO or the U.S. to leave. And they feel it's hypocritical for the U.S. and NATO to ask them to leave. So, take that for what it's worth, I guess.
Well, they are meeting right now, the NATO foreign ministers in Brussels, and the United States is pushing for NATO to send a strong message to Russia for its refusal to withdraw from Georgia. I, by the way, put a very interesting little cute comment on the blog. I put the definition from the dictionary on what it means to withdraw, because they are moving further in while saying that they are withdrawing. But that being said, Condoleezza Rice is talking about NATO uniting to put diplomatic sanctions on Russia. There's no indication now from the NATO foreign ministers that they would take any military action. And this underscores the problem that you just point out, Eric, and that is NATO doesn't want to come up against Russia. The United States doesn't want to come up against Russia. You talk about a nuclear power here. A nuclear power, by the way, that is threatened to unleash its nuclear arsenal on Poland, because Poland has asked and has received approval from the United States for defensive missiles. So this is a very serious situation. And I think they can run, Eric, with